Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. And of course, please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Don't forget to subscribe to Candid Stanisci 1030 on YouTube. Now on CFL Talk, as usual, joining me is David Morassutti. David, how you doing, sir?
Doing well, getting myself ready for the Argos C&E game.
Yeah, it's the CNE game. Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say I'm mentally getting myself ready with it because while the C&E game draws a bigger crowd, and I'm sure the Argos do appreciate that, the C&E is a very tough thing to navigate on its own, but you are adding now let's generously say 15,000 fans trying to get to a game. In all the games I've been
Park,
to, park. Well, not park.
park,
Getting to the game because you've got
getting the game,
you're
park.
you're putting in because if people know BMO Field's right in the exhibition grounds, you're gonna have fans trying to get to their get to where they want to go, and you're gonna have obviously the us people like us are trying to get to where we have to go, and people at the CNE are just gonna enjoy their fun, and it's a Friday night. Friday night's usually the busiest night for the CNE. Weekends are the busiest for the CNE because that's when everybody is off and everyone wants to go and enjoy the great things about the CNE. I know I asked Ryan Dinwiddie about the CNE game and if he was excited for it. He first gave out a chuckle. He says, "Well, I wish we could have enjoyed it better last year because they lost in the CNE game last year. So it's like you go out there and you try to enjoy yourself, but you also just lost the game." And he says, when you're winning, these distractions are nice to have, but there are still distractions in a way.
So I'm looking here. I'm looking at the weather. So it's a couple of days before. Um, it's calling for some rain. But there's it's not supposed to rain the whole time. Anyway, it'll be fun, and there's a lot of indoor stuff you can do at the CNE while it's raining, and then of course there's a ride you can go on. We had a chance at the last game to see. Well, the last game we saw it, the lights all on, and it looks like a lot of fun, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And it's the end of summer, and this is what the CNE is all about. And while it's the end of summer, it's the introduction time wise to the real tough part and important part of the Canadian Football League season. We have, of course, because the CNE is on and we know that it ends on Boxing Day, it's only around for a couple of weeks. Not Boxing Day, my goodness. Uh, Labor Day. What am I thinking? It's Christmas to me anyway. The Labor Day weekend is awesome, and it'll be a lot of fun. And that's coming up too. So go to the X, enjoy the X, and start seeing some of the games that really matter. The one and this weekend in particular, we're going to see Calgary, who are the only team to have beaten Toronto. So that's going to be an interesting visit to the CNE and also the Calgary Stampeders, who are looking to continue improving their overall game.
Yeah, definitely. Like this is now what I call the grind time in the CFL, right? First half teams are kind of establishing themselves, trying to figure things out. This is where teams start to separate themselves, whether they want to be playoff teams, contenders, whether they want to cement themselves as contenders. Like this is going to be this is the time where you really have to figure out, you know, what you want to be as a team. And there's some teams that still haven't done that yet. And there's teams that know that they got a little bit more work to do to get there. So will be interesting to see how which teams take advantage of you know bye weeks near the end of the season, maybe off days. How many teams are going to get impacted by shorter schedules now? Like they're going to try to fit in games. Um, it's a totally different situation you find yourselves going into the final part of the year.
So it's around mid-season, and we might as well have a couple of conversations in regards to the mid-season. And I think one key factor, statistics have been released that the Argos, Lions, and Alouettes, coincidentally the three largest cities in the Canadian Football League and in Canada, um, their ticket sales are up 20%.
Yeah, the three teams that have always been kind of the big talking points when it comes to attendance, BC, Toronto, and Montreal. Well, the CFL put out today that average game day revenue for the Argos, BC, and Lions is the Lions and the Montreal Alouettes is up 26% year over year through week 10. So like this is also obviously when game the summer months is always when they're looking to try to get the most out of the viewership and people coming in through the gates. And we didn't find out. That was the one thing someone had asked me was, what was the attendance at the Argo game in the last Argo game?
I still don't know.
They didn't announce it. Somebody had said it was around 12 to 13,000. I mean, I said, okay, you might know that one, but no one told us, and I can't confirm that.
I don't think it was that small.
I'm looking actually at the CNE game for tickets because I'm seeing some fans saying they can't get an Upper Bowl ticket for the Argos game. And at the last game, the Upper Bowl wasn't full. There was a lot of seats available. Now, again, the CNE game is usually the best draw. How many would you say it adds for the CNE for the Argos? A couple thousand?
Yeah, maybe.
So if they're averaging between 13 to 13,000 to get 15, 16,000, that's good for Toronto. I know other people are going to say, well, BC can get close to 30. I've seen other teams get into the 25 range. I know Hamilton had 21, and that's considered a good number. Like Argos would love to get to 20, but you got to start somewhere. And I think this has been one of the better seasons in terms of having a consistent crowd. They haven't gone below 10,000, which that was abysmal when they were getting under a 10,000. You really see it in the stands. You're starting to see it getting a little bit better this year.
I don't know. I just I saw more fans on the other side of the field where there weren't that many in other weeks, right? The way I saw it, and there were more people across the field, and I didn't notice that the near side, which is where we're at, was any emptier than it normally is, if I can say that. So yeah, I think they're improving with attendance, and I think it's important that people understand the Canadian Football League is paying for mistakes that they made in the past, and pick your mistake. When it comes to the Toronto Argonauts, the team not having a home for a long time, uh, playing on the road for a big part of the season one year. The schedules have been things that fans have really lamented. So and that's just with the Argos. The rest, the Canadian Football League, we can talk. We can talk a lot about some of the things that have been a drag on the way things have been going. But at least if the facts are clear, and they are up 26% between the three of them. Now, I would assume that BC is probably the one, you know, doing the best. And I would suggest that Montreal probably comes in right after that. And I think the Argos are probably the least contributor to the improvement on ticket sales. But there's an improvement by them as well. I'm convinced of that. So, regardless of the
No, no, for sure. And you want to see that growth. That's been the big thing. Like for people to expect the CFL all of a sudden to have full stadiums everywhere, like it doesn't happen quickly. Things like this do take time. What's more important is that teams are willing to continually and teams continue to invest in it, right? And do the things that are going to bring people in, right? If
yeah,
you show the effort usually gets reciprocated in some way, shape, or form.
what we're looking for is successful promotion.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's what's got to happen.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully things. Well, it'll be a great day to go to a football game. You get a free ticket into the Canadian National Exhibition. Go in the morning and cap off your evening watching professional football and some really entertaining football. And with Calgary in town, it's going to be an intense game as well because it's going to be one of those games where the Argos lost to Calgary. And these two teams love playing each other because of the gag that is the Toronto Argonauts are Calgary of the East.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of players and the coaches know each other. So there's a lot of familiarity and there's that extra little jam in their game. And it'll be, well, we'll see if the Argos come up flat in this one. They did in Calgary a little bit. They had an injury. We'll see how the quarterback, of course, you know, Kelly handles the game this time. Um, so it'll be an interesting weekend for football everywhere, not just in Toronto.
Oh, of course. Like the final months of the summer are big, and Labor Day. We know the lead up for Labor Day is always it was always an important one for the CFL. So yeah, I'm curious to see how, especially the teams that maybe are struggling. Are they going to see that dip, or are they gonna, or can they continue some sort of momentum?
Yeah, yeah. We'll talk about the teams in a minute. Let's talk about some of the players. And there's a really important situation developing. Caleros and Fajardo look to be playing again on Thursday. They'll be under center. That's great news. And Trevor Harris is practicing with
Yeah, I mean,
Saskatchewan.
it's nice when the starting quarterbacks are able to play. Like it makes the league that much better. And for Montreal, I mean, Montreal should be fortunate that Caleb Evans has kept them, in striking distance with the Argos, right? Because you have your starting quarterback go down, you get worried of what that's going to do long term for the team. Well, it didn't. It didn't harm the Alouettes because they remained in striking distance with Toronto. With Saskatchewan, not having Trevor Harris has certainly been felt. Not having him with Winnipeg, like I think really what for Colaros individually, this keeps him in that MOP conversation if he's able to come back and play as he's been playing all season, right? You don't want an injury to impact that in the way kind of Nathan Rourke had his MOP status impacted by injury. With Claros, the interesting thing is this is kind of he's had bumps along the way. He hasn't had long spells of injuries as with Winnipeg. Knock on wood, it doesn't happen. But let's see now. The body doesn't. It gets tougher as you get older. So I'm curious to see how this will impact Caleros because I think there's going to be concern always with him because of his injury past. And I'm curious to see, is this just a small blip on the radar or is this something that he's going to have to be dealing with for the rest of the year?
Absolutely. That brings us to the midway point of the season. We've had an opportunity to see some number two and number three quarterbacks come in and get our attention. You talked about Caleb Evans with the Owls. He has really acquired some attention. He's done a great job of, coming in and being under center instead of Fajardo. He has helped raise this team to a level that, you know, a lot of people expected and expect over the past few years. Montreal's been an up and coming team. They've done a great job of improving their squad, and they're doing it with a backup quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, that's been the struggle for a lot of teams. I don't. And the thing is, when people are bringing up the injuries and CFL quarterbacks, and they're saying how many guys are down, I say let's also forget we're talking about a 19 league. You can't compare it to the NFL that has 32 teams. It's a different scale. If you look at the NFL, there's quite a few quarterbacks or players that get injured. We just don't talk about it as much because there's a lot of starting quarterbacks in the NFL. In the CFL, there's only 9 teams. So when 2, 3, 4 guys go down, that's going to raise a lot more eyebrows when people are saying, no, a lot of quarterbacks getting hurt. This is bad for the CFL. Well, it is because you don't have you don't have the benefit of having a bunch of teams, right? With starting quarterbacks, you only got 9, and you don't. The talent pool of guys behind them isn't there like it is in other leagues. Well, some believe in other leagues that the talent pool's not there either, but you're not going. There's not enough starting quarterbacks with the capability of playing elite going around everywhere.
Well, let's not forget too, David, that the issue really is what it comes down to is these quarterbacks that the Canadian Football League have playing their game are quarterbacks that need a few years to catch up to what this game's all about. It's a totally different game, a totally different field, a different amount of players. The 1 yard off the, all that stuff. It takes a while for quarterbacks to learn this new game. That's it. That's an additional challenge that Canadian Football League teams have with bringing in quarterbacks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was no, and people always say, "Oh, why aren't teams, why aren't teams bringing in the Canadian quarterbacks?" Because what's the benefit to them, right? You go for the best talent available at that position. You don't necessarily care too much about what their nationality is. Well, Nathan Rourke kind of, I think, opened the door a little bit more and saying, there are good Canadian quarterbacks out there, regardless of what,
Absolutely.
right?
So, yep.
Trey
So,
Ford, I think he's shown there is potential there. Is he ready yet? I don't think so. It's only his second year in the league, and he hasn't even played that much, right? He's had injuries. He hasn't even gone into games because coaching decision hasn't put him in games. So we're seeing the door being open. Actually, I'm there's a call tomorrow with Nathan Rourke's brother Curtis York. He's kind of the next Canadian quarterback that people are keeping their eyes on. So they're out there. There's not many of them because we're not developing them here in Canada. A lot of these guys, I mean, Trey Ford was developed up here, but the Rourkes went to Ohio. A lot of them are going down south because that's where, unfortunately, that's the best development path, which is not a bad thing because if you get a good quarterback out of him, he's Canadian, you market yourself a little bit better. Look at what Nathan Rourke's, what he's done in the preseason. A lot of eyeballs are on the fact that he's a Canadian, and that's kind of, I think, taking away a little bit of that stigma of the Canadian quarterback a little bit more every time you see him on the field.
absolutely. So we've got Caleb Evans of the Owls who's been doing a really good job. You mentioned Trey Ford, a Canadian, who finally is getting a chance to show what he can do, and he helped Edmonton win their first game. And then there's Drew Brown, which doesn't fit into the category of really what I wanted to talk to, or the new up and coming quarterbacks. But what he's done is with his play, he has made himself an impactful kind of quarterback that could be desirable on other rosters somewhere where they need a quarterback. He has proved to be a really good quarterback, offensively speaking, and of course, his ability to protect the ball and make smart decisions.
Yeah, for sure. But that's always going to be the challenge with that position. It's always like that. So I totally get it for sure.
Then, of course, we have Dustin Crum, who we saw, he blew up in his first couple of games, overtime victories, um, incredibly uh, efficient in his first couple of games, but he has since not been as efficient. He's flamed out a little bit.
Well, the interesting thing here is when I was looking at this game against Ottawa and Toronto, I said, well, Toronto's going to have to watch the run game with Ottawa because Dustin Crum likes to do things with his legs. But we're also starting to see Dustin Crum getting a little more comfortable with the receivers, right? The people have to remember he was not taking starter reps in training camp. He was never viewed in the picture of being the guy in the offense. It takes time for your quarterback to get in line with your receivers, to get in sync. What I was impressed by what he did in Toronto was he pushing the ball down the field 40, 50 yards? There was that one play he made that he did. Receivers were making plays for him, but he was doing his best to not put his team in negative positions either. Eventually, the Toronto defense did get to him. They were taking away his time in the pocket. Second half wasn't as good as his first half. But I've been impressed with Dustin Crum. I think goes to show that if you're willing to give guys opportunities, they could surprise. Like I think at worst he should be their backup going forward behind Jeremiah Mazzoli. But right now, he's given them a chance to win. Is it enough? Unfortunately, it's not. But he's gotten them very close.
What we've learned this season, I think, at least what I've learned, is that it's important that you give your number three a chance when the opportunity presents itself. That opportunity can be when the number one quarterback goes down and the backup quarter, the number two, doesn't really get things going. What we've learned this season is when you bring in the third string quarterback, some good things might happen.
Mm-hmm.
There's a knack that quarterbacks need. Everybody learns things at their own speed, rate, and time. Um, we talk about how, and I talked about earlier, how quarterbacks have to adjust to the Canadian game because most of them, if not all, the higher percentage of them, 99%, play in U.S. colleges or play, U.S. football. But some players grasp the Canadian game faster than others. And I think that's one of the lessons we learned with Dustin Crum, where, he didn't really have that much time preparing to be a Canadian Football League quarterback. But when given the opportunity, he had assets that align well with his position in the Canadian game.
Yeah, right. And that's what some people say. Oh, why can't the league get more NCAA Division 1 top quarterbacks to come up here and play? There's two reasons. One, some of these guys believe they should be NFL quarterbacks, right? They go and play in these Division 1 schools to get to the best level of football. Unfortunately, the CFL, some might believe it's the best level of football, but to the Americans, it's not, right? Number two, you're also looking at coaching staffs who scout or manage in front office staff that scout these quarterbacks. And what they're looking for is saying, can this guy's skill set translate to the Canadian game? Right? Not everyone can do it. Do you think Tom Brady could be a good CFL quarterback? Probably, because he's a really good quarterback.
It's a pretty good
Uh,
quarterback.
I remember some people were bringing up certain players, and I'm like, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be a good Canadian Football League quarterback because, they need mobility. They need to be able to spread the field a little bit more. They got to be able to handle their reads better because they got the extra defender and things like that.
You need to have a strong arm because you've got that 5 yard pass that goes two-thirds of the width of the field. So you're
Exactly.
throwing a 40-yard pass for a 5 yard gain. So yeah, so you have to have a good arm.
Yeah, and that remains the big thing with Canadian quarterbacks in the Canadian Football League is that we've seen quarterbacks try to come up here and make a name for us. Even receivers say it's such an adjustment because of the waggle and things like that.
That's
The
correct.
offense in the Canadian Football League is so intricate in a lot of ways that it's not a plug and play for these guys. It takes time to learn it. Chad Kelly, it took him almost a season to learn it, right? There's guys that it takes time for them to not only learn it, we're talking about just learning the game. Then you're talking about mastering the game, right? It does take time, but if teams are willing to give them that opportunity and if the skill sets match, then you're happy about it.
We've talked about Caleb Evans of the Owls, Drew Brown of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Trey Ford of Edmonton, Dustin Crum of Ottawa, and how about Dola Gala? He's had kind of the same kind of Dustin Crum kind of success. He's been good, and he hasn't been as good as he could be, but there's potential there.
Yeah, there is potential. Like Dolagala came in during the touchdown Atlantic game, and he threw a touchdown pass, and I'm like, okay, maybe there's something here, but it's also different positions in the game. One team's trying not to, they're trying not to get hurt. They're trying to keep guys healthy. So, but I mean, what I like from Dolagala was just there's poise there. There's he's willing to sit in and take those shots. Accuracy it was another big one for him. I think the offense certainly does look different with him in there. And yeah, is it would I say he's ready to take over for Trevor Harris? I don't think so. But what I did see was a quarterback that made went up against a really good defense, right? A defense that loves to get to the quarterback, and it didn't phase him. It did not phase him at all. So, I credit him, and that's not an easy game to win. You get off to a good start, you build a lead. That was important. Would I've liked to see more than 3 points in the fourth quarter if I'm a Saskatchewan fan? Yes, especially when BC was trying to make that comeback. But they made sure that BC was not going to. They did their best to take away BC strengths, and so yeah, I think Dolagala. Let's see how long he can keep this team going because right now they're in the driver's seat when it comes to third place in the West.
A playoff spot. Yeah,
Yeah,
and the most important characteristic that we've learned over the years and what's becoming more and more clear and what's important is that quarterbacks can't lose the game for the team. They've got to protect the ball, not throw any interceptions, be smart with the ball, and avoid turnovers. And Dalagala has done that pretty well. Another guy who's had a great start, but also right now, he's got a book on him a little bit. That's Taylor Powell of Hamilton. Um, he's the last guy I want to talk about anyway. He came in another one of these. Oh my goodness! Wow, look at what he's doing. His legs did most of the work, and his devil may care attitude. I don't know, a full season of Taylor Powell is going to be hard to see because I'm not sure that he could survive a full season with the way he plays because he loves to run erect, standing up. So that's one of the things that Taylor's going to have to learn in the Canadian Football League. That could be you got to worry about that.
I think for Powell, the more important one is he hit Tim White has taken a big workload for this Hamilton offense. Who's behind him? Who's going to step up and be a playmaker? Like James Butler was their second leading receiver. He's a running back.
Hmm.
Running backs. Let's not say running backs shouldn't get production, but Tim White had 101 yards, and then nobody else had anywhere. They were all under 30 yards. Like that's not good enough. He needs more guys to step up. Now they're also the play calling is different. He's not taking huge shots down the field, not really. So the Hamilton's gotta adjust. I think this is the worst year to be in this type of position if you're Hamilton, but this might be a year where they have to take a step back and reevaluate everything.
The
And
year that they have the Grey Cup at home. Oh,
yeah,
that's
the good thing for Hamilton is Ottawa doesn't want to like they're tied. Ottawa's tied with Hamilton. Hamilton has the game in hand. They could still sneak into the playoffs. So like the important thing for Hamilton right now is keep yourself in the mix. Don't let the
stay
crossover.
ahead of Calgary.
Stay ahead of Calgary, right? Right now they are barely, right? Because they still have a game in hand on Calgary. But I think the worst part about what's going on with Hamilton right now is their 1-4 record at home. You want to take advantage of your home games because it's a lot harder to win on the road. And so I think if you're Hamilton with your Taylor Powell, you got to find a way to get more out of your offense. It's tough because they're throwing in their third string quarterback. But this is the hand they're dealt with right now. And they bring in now they got Scott Milanovich taking over for Tommy Condell. So I don't know how much it's going to really change considering Milanovich has been here since the start of the year. What's he going to implement that's different? I don't know.
Well, he's been able to see what's going on, but still, it's once he's got his hands on the controls, the players now have to understand what he's trying to put together, and there's going to be an adjustment period for Hamilton. The question is, what will they look like in a couple of weeks? But this past week, if we can talk about the games, Edmonton beat them 24-10. Was Hamilton not a very good team against a team that's not good at all, who won their first game. No, I think Edmonton's been played pretty well in the last 3 weeks. They just haven't been able to put four quarters together. And finally, in this game, they actually did a good job of coming as close as they've been in playing a consistent football throughout the game and the leadership of Trey Ford, as we talked about earlier.
Maybe also what they need is a rain delay so they can catch their breath, themselves fresh too. Yeah, I think with Edmonton, like what this does is it gets the monkey off the back of saying, are we gonna ever win a game? It's not gonna get any easier. Let's see if they can win a home game. But Edmonton's trend looks like they're trending in the right direction. You know, sorry. The big one here is for them is, you know, can they avoid beating themselves? Every loss that they've had in a lot of ways, especially recently, it's like, Edmonton's pulled at Edmonton. Like they found a way to lose the game. They are up 22 points, they lose the game. When the team has confidence that they can pull off a victory, it does a heck of a lot for that group. Now, they're not they're 1-9. Is the playoffs out of reach? Likely just because of their start. I wouldn't say impossible because we might see a team in the West with a losing record get into the playoffs potentially.
Well, they'd have to run the table to be 9-9.
Yeah. And I don't know if they're I mean, I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, but the important thing is, I mean, the unfortunate thing is they got to find ways to beat teams within their division. The good thing for Edmonton is Calgary, one of the teams they're chasing. They're going to have the two games against them coming up. Saskatchewan, you cannot lose to Saskatchewan. It's these interdivision games that are going to be important for Edmonton if they want any chance. What they showed against Hamilton, well, not only can they keep Hamilton down, but they're able to get production. Although Hamilton's team, it's not a good Hamilton team this year. So let's see what they do against a better team. Well, I think a better team in Ottawa. The record doesn't suggest so, but I think it's going to be a tougher battle for Edmonton this time around.
There's teams that have played well who have literally and sometimes figuratively dropped the ball towards the end of the game, and Ottawa has been a team that has really, by the skin of their teeth, finished games with victories and losses. They've been a pretty, heckle, Jekyll and Hyde in as far as the scores and when they're scoring. They've allowed themselves to be beaten late, and they've beaten teams late. So a little bit of consistency necessary for Ottawa. One thing's for sure: that defensive line they've got, they sure do know how to keep quarterbacks honest. So that's something that Ottawa has going for them.
Yeah, definitely. I just think Ottawa in a lot of ways like Edmonton, like the the blueprint is there. Execution needs to be there. Yeah, so like I do think execution needs to be there for Ottawa. They didn't execute on plays against Toronto. Toronto did step things up defensively against them, but we've seen in past weeks that they get themselves in positions, but they just can't finish it off.
If you don't play consistently, and you can't give teams, especially good teams, windows towards victories. And this is, again, the reason why Toronto is 7-1 is because when given the opportunity, they strike. And that's what you can't do against good teams. And as a team that maybe is looking to improve, the biggest improvement you can make is be consistent. And Ottawa hasn't been, but I really like that team. I think they're a team that um, a couple of changes here or there, a little luck as well, with how things work out with injuries and stuff. I think they can be really competitive. And the same thing's true for Hamilton. And I believe the same is for Edmonton. These are three teams running in the same territory. They're outside the playoffs looking in, right? So it's going to be interesting.
We've seen what we have seen is we have seen, players. We've seen Edmonton and Hamilton show a little more competitiveness. I think Hamilton offensively, there's a struggle there, but for Edmonton, like those shutout losses, I think were kind of a wake up call that this team need to be more competitive. They weren't competitive enough, that's for sure. So we saw that when they eventually took that step and made trade for the quarterback and they made Jarris Jackson the offensive coordinator. It was You're starting to see that with Hamilton. I mean, I just don't know if their offense is enough. I don't know if they have enough on the offense. They got the running back, but the other parts of the offense just aren't there.
Yeah,
And now maybe with some time they can figure that part out, or maybe they're going to have to wait it out until Bo Levi Mitchell is back. But they don't have the ability to be like, okay, we'll try to weather the storm. As we said, the crossover is a possibility.
well,
You know,
we've talked a lot about backup quarterbacks carrying the mail, at least helping the team to win more than they lose, or at least even keep things going. And that's what Hamilton needed. That's what Edmonton got. So that game 24-10 for Edmonton. That was the Thursday game. On Friday night football. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers beat the Calgary Stampeders 19-18. What a game. The receptions in this game, there was one after the other. I think it was probably the best of all four games. This was the most entertaining receiving game that I watched. It was amazing. It was an incredible game, and down to the wire it went. And unfortunately, Calgary fell short.
yeah, unfortunately, and again, this is another. It's just another one of those teams where I think offensively there's just a gear missing. There's no. I don't know if there's a better way to say it. Right? This is just a team that offensively doesn't have that explosiveness.
They got to score a touchdown. They've scored what, one touchdown in the last 3 games, 4 games.
Right? Like even
Offensive
in,
touchdown.
I look about the game against Toronto because I got to see them really close there, and it's like nothing like that makes me worried about playing a Calgary team. Like Toronto beat themselves in that game, and I talked to them, and they said we beat ourselves in a lot of ways. Yeah, Calgary tried their best to not make mistakes, but they weren't pushing the envelope really too much. And that's unfortunate because that's not the Calgary we've come to know. That's a team that should be feared. That's used to be feared, and that's not happening anymore. Once you take the rushing game away from them, and you force Jake Mayer to be the guy, it's not working. The accuracy isn't there. He's not able to get a lot from his receivers, unfortunately. And yeah, the touchdowns aren't there. Your quarterback needs to start throwing touchdowns. And their defense, like the defense,
Even the running game,
a
running into
chance
the end
to
zone
win.
would be nice.
Yeah, they allowed 19 points to defense. They gave them every chance to win, but as you said, their offense couldn't score them a touchdown. That would frustrate me as a defense. If I give my offense a chance to win and they don't pull their weight.
Yeah, it wasn't a question of good field position. They had fair to good field position. So, you know, but teams like Winnipeg, you give them a chance, they're going to take that chance and they're going to run with it. And in the case of Winnipeg, they did just that. I mean, Drew Brown is the story for me as far as the Winnipeg Blue Bombers is concerned. I am amazed at how good he's looked, David. He has looked awesome. I mean, incredible, and he's done it like in that game. He never got a TD. Didn't throw for a TD or anything. And the difference between the two quarterbacks, he didn't throw for a TD. Jake Meyer threw an interception. That's the difference between the two quarterbacks and the contribution they make. The running game for Winnipeg, 80 yards for Brady Oliveira. That's a good day. Kadeem Carey, 28 yards. just to make the point where the offense needs help. It's again the running game. They've got some receivers, but they're not connecting. It's I don't know. Um, it's a real confusion, I think, for them. And then you have Winnipeg and their receivers. Some of the catches they made. My goodness, some of the catches we saw in this game.
Yeah, we're like that. I still think that Winnipeg has the best receivers in this league. I think BC gives them a run for their money, but I still do think that BC is close, but Winnipeg just has the numbers. They have Dalton Schoen, they have Kenny Lawler, they have Nick Dembski, they
You
have
can say Kenny Lawler again.
yeah, they have Wolotarski. They like you just go up and down the list, and like that is a deep, deep Winnipeg. I'm gonna say Jets for a second. Winnipeg Blue Bombers offense, right? Like that's a tough, tough pass for any defense to cover, and it's a quarterback's dream because you got guys that will make plays for you. I think Drew Brown, you know, came down to earth a little bit more when he wasn't playing against the Edmonton team that was afraid to win a game. But I liked what I saw because he didn't throw. He didn't put himself in his team in negative positions for sure.
And when you go into the bakery section of the game, 5 turnovers for Winnipeg, 1 for Calgary.
Yeah,
Big difference there.
no, it is. It
Ball protection.
especially when the game is close. When it's a 1 point game, one possession. Calgary could have won this game on just field goals if they didn't turn the ball over.
Absolutely. This
So
is this is the truth. Let's talk about Saturday, and that was Montreal at Ottawa at 25-24. Either of these teams could have won. Unfortunately for Ottawa, they didn't have that magic. Once again, they lose a close one.
it's tough. These are tough games to. If you're Ottawa, like like that has to be a kick to kick you down. To lose by 1 point to a team that you're chasing in the standings, and it's a team that like Montreal's again, they're happy to get the win. I'm sure they would have liked it a little bit easier on themselves. But again, Ottawa made that extra mistake that Montreal like it comes down to those moments, right? Montreal in the fourth quarter, they found a way. Caleb Evans found, he lost the turnover battle with Dustin Crum, but he found a way to get his team to where they needed to go. Like Dustin
Absolutely.
Crum put up over 300 yards against Toronto.
333
100
for
yards against
Caleb Evans.
what happened from 1 week where you went up against arguably a better defense in Toronto and you couldn't even get to 200 yards against Montreal. Now, the good thing is they were running the ball quite a bit against Montreal, and that allowed them to try to, you know, to try to get the possession battle there. But they also just they couldn't sustain drives as much as they needed to. When you're running the ball too, you're giving away opportunities for your offense to really put up points in this game. And that was another thing that they just couldn't do. Like Montreal was the more dynamic offense in this game. Caleb
In the
Evans,
second half. They were behind 17-3 going into the second half. Ottawa looked there at Montreal was making all kinds of mistakes. Talk about the bakery section. My goodness, the baker's dozen, a little more, and it would have been a baker's dozen of mistakes that they made that pretty much handed the game to Ottawa. And they came out in that second half and played a clean game.
exactly. And that's a problem there. Like you can't if you're up 17-3, usually in the CFL that's not in the bag. We know that comebacks like that happen quite often. But you can't you can't just put 7 points up and be happy and hope you're going to win the game. You can't,
Absolutely.
right? Montreal's proven to be a decent team. They're a contending team. If I'm Toronto, you see what Montreal did. I'm not saying they should be worried, but
They should.
you can't overlook Montreal. They're not a
Oh,
cakewalk. They're a good team. They're a better team than I expected they were going to be, especially offensively. I think Austin Mack was going to be this good. Nope. Tyler Snead. Nope. Hergy Maala. Yeah, I saw. We did see some of that. I just think that there's this Montreal team is a very resilient bunch. I think Jason Moss deserves a lot of credit. People were doubting his ability as a head coach. Now, still a lot of time left in the season, but he's got this team going in the right direction. This is a team that Montreal fans should be proud of what they've done the last few weeks.
what he's done, the head coach, what he's done is he's curbed his temper, and he isn't running, you know, running hot. He looks a lot more in control than he has in past years. You know, he would go ballistic from time to time in games, and I don't think that's a good look for a head coach. And he has mellowed a little bit. His little experience in Saskatchewan has stood him well, and he's done a great job. And then when you look at BC, that you know, um, sorry, when you look at what he's done in Montreal, it's just incredible. He's done a marvelous job, and they won as a team, and that's what I like about Montreal. Uh, you know, every player, every one of them makes a contribution, and they're all important in the victory, and it's a great attitude that they have there.
You have to have that attitude.
Yeah, it's a well coached team, and the team plays very consistent football. That's really important. The next game we'll talk about is BC and Saskatchewan. They lose 34-29. And here's what I'm going to say. We talk about numbers. Vernon Adams Jr. threw four. Are you ready for this? 455 yards, three TDs, one interception, and a loss.
Those are winning numbers.
Aren't they, though?
Usually,
You would think.
you would think so, but I think that's again goes to show just the randomness sometimes of the CFL in a lot of ways.
Some might suggest a lot of those yards were made at the end of the game when they were well behind, and of course they were being given a little bit more leeway to make passes and stuff. But that yardage, the number itself, is hard to just to align it with the fact that it was garbage time, which some people use as a term.
Yeah, and I also think that they were playing with against a Saskatchewan team that, Dolagala stepped up and he needed to in this one. So, I think Saskatchewan were kind of looking for this type of game. This game was kind of
No, it's okay. I was just
yeah.
getting ready for my comment.
I also think that when you look at Saskatchewan at BC, there were missed opportunities, even though they put up all those yards and 3 touchdowns. I also think Vernon Adams wasn't 100% healthy either. You saw
Yeah,
you saw some
he
limping
was limping.
like that. That impacts it.
That's when he played his best after he started limping.
But BC's learning that what it takes to win these sort of games, right? That it's a full team effort. Your offense can do a lot, but the other parts have to really come through as well.
Emilis's catch, my goodness, there were some really good catches in this game as well. Um, Dolegala, statistically, it's easy to explain why we think he did so well. He had 3 touchdown passes, zero interceptions. That that part of it, I think, is the important factor. So he had as many touchdowns as Vernon Adams, but he threw one, didn't throw an interception. Vernon Adams threw one, and there were also some, again, the bakery section here didn't favor BC.
No, it didn't, and that's a tough one for BC because they had the big win against Calgary, trying to reestablish themselves among the top teams in the West. And now a loss like this, the good thing is they kept it close, so they can't feel too hard. They can't be too hard on themselves, but these are games you got to find a way to win, right? Like I think the important thing here is, they can't deviate too much from what they've done offensively, because I think offensively they're such a good team. They just have to they got to clean up things. There's things that they got to clean up, but I think they're in good shape. But a loss like this should remind them of that they're not invincible either.
Absolutely. So Saskatchewan wins 34-29 against an inconsistent BC team that destroys its opposition or loses to the opposition. It's amazing how they can be that, inconsistent in that regard. So we've got the three top teams in the Western Division, with Saskatchewan at 5-5. The three top teams in the Eastern Division, Hamilton's in third at 3-6, and of course you've got Montreal and Toronto. So this week, with this week's games, will have some impact on the standings, and it'll be a real interesting week. Last word to you, my friend.
Yeah, it will be interesting. Let's see how many teams are going to take advantage of these last few before the stretch run. Which teams maybe are able to pad themselves a bit of a break in the standings, because a lot of teams are close to each other, and see if a separation can happen.
Thanks for this, David.
Thank you, Frank.
For David Morassutti, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a special time this week. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, and download it. And don't forget Candid Frank Stanisci on YouTube. Subscribe. Thank you for watching.